No.
Sorry. So it's bright enough here, so we probably need to move on. That's really bright. More. That's probably fine. I feel very bright here. Okay, can everyone hear me? I think I can hear myself pretty loudly. So that's good. Thanks for coming, everyone. It's great to see you all here. As most of you know, we had to rearrange this event due to train strikes. So it's fantastic that it's finally going ahead. So I'm Ronnie. I'm one of the organisers of the Sheffield Black Humanities series, and I'm also standing in for Aggie, who's the director of the Centre of Poetry and Poetics. Unfortunately, she has COVID and she's being very kind to us all by staying away, but I'm hoping that she's joined us online. So it's great that we've also got an audience online. Hello, everyone, if you can hear and see me. And I'm just going to introduce the first of our three poets. So that's Safia Khan, and then we also have Inua, who's over there, and we have Imtiaz, who I know that most of you are familiar with her work as at the front there, and that's the order that we're going to hear from them today. So I'm going to introduce Safia, and then I'm going to ask Adam to introduce Inua afterwards. Each poet will read for 15 to 20 minutes. And then at the end, we'll have some time for questions, discussion, comments, and so on. So I'll get started. So Safia Khan is a junior doctor and poet. Pause for appreciation of this dual role. She's also just run a workshop for our students, and she's rushing back to work after this. So we're really happy to have her here. Her debut collection, Much Mirch, was published in 2022 with Smith, Doorstop, and woParty. Is that right?
I think the
oh, is that printed out wrong?
There's like a line or two that's been cut from something.
Oh, okay.
Something about I write about hip hop, which should be great, but it's not true.
Oh, is that not true? Okay, I won't read that bit out then, unless you want to start. I mean, it's fine. We love people who do more than one thing, but it sounds like you do enough already. So she's been commissioned to write and deliver lectures in poetry for various universities and organisations, including the British Library, the University of Oxford, the Poetry Business, and the Hippocrates Initiative for Poetry and Medicine. Her work's been included in various journals and anthologies, including The North, Bath MAGG, Poetry Wales, Introduction X, and more that I'm not going to read all of them out. And we have her book for sale here, if you want to get a copy afterwards. And if she's able to stay at the end, we could sign a couple. So Safia, welcome.
Thank you for that introduction and for organising today's wonderful event. It's lovely to see you all in person and be here. And thank you to the students that made it to my workshop as well. That was really lovely and special to be a part of. So I'm going to start by reading a couple of poems that's from my pamphlet, which came out, I think, in 2022. I'm looking at the people that put it out to give me some confirmation. That was a couple of years ago. Since then, I finished medical school. I've been working as a junior doctor. I haven't had a huge amount of time to write. So I'm going to try and read some new things that I've been working on, but most of them have not seen the light of day yet. And depending on the reaction, I might just pick up a copy of my pamphlet and just go with some of the poems that I know I've already written and finished. So this poem is a short prose poem which comes from the pamphlet called "But Where Are You Really From?" Clay, a shape-shifting clot of blood, a kernel inside the first shell breath of God, primordial soup reduced to its atoms after being brought to boil, the same place as the stars and birds, where everything that ever existed was wrapped in tinfoil and microwaved into being. An iron ballerina pirouetting round the sun and sweating out the oceans, mountains formed in an ice tray mold, a patch of grass that drifted from elsewhere, a patch of grass still drifting. Like a refugee with amnesia, I cannot recall home, though once in a while I catch its fragrance on the wind. Oh, it's okay. We don't need to do that. Don't feel bad, but there is also this, like, when you're at poetry readings and there's that kind of awkward moment after each individual poem, like we'll skip the applause. I'll imagine it. You can clap at the end if you want. So this poem I wrote quite a few years ago, and it makes me quite sad that it is still quite relevant. So as I'm reading it, it's probably not as easy to tell, but I've tried to write it as like a series of tweets appearing on the timeline, or X's, whatever they're now known as. This is called Timeline originally. Regional accent is crying in the beach hut. She has just been properly mugged off. Influencer is offering you laxative branded as flat tummy tea for the summer. Hashtag sponsored, hashtag ad. Breaking news, foreign body drowned crossing the Mediterranean. Influencer is offering you gummy bear vitamins for hair as soft as hair extensions. Hashtag sponsored, hashtag ad. Union Jack is rejoicing illegals cannot claim benefits when they are dead. Blonde Highlights is elbowing the air in a car park to film a dance for TikTok. Uncredited photograph. Child with seaweed in hair and blue skin is lying on sand next to litter. Blonde Highlights is live streaming herself crying on the living room floor. She is so sorry, she was just miming the lyrics. Regional Accent is posting a no makeup selfie to hashtag raise awareness for the hashtag ongoing crisis. Google is showing results for the movie Titanic based on your most recent search, boat, tragedy. So I'm going to move on to reading some poems that have mostly, I think this one has been published or it's been read before, and then the rest of them haven't been published. And I don't know, I mean, also I'm in Sheffield, so I'm not in danger of like saying anything too dangerous if it's vaguely political. But yeah, I'm like, I don't know what I'm so scared about. But I think I haven't written much because I've been busy, but I've also found it slightly insane that we've kind of just been witnessing this genocide happen for the last year. And then it's like, okay, let me just write a poem about a guy. Like, what am I supposed to do? And I don't think that writing poems is the same as, you know, stopping selling arms. But I think that poems are a unique way of calling to action or witnessing something, if that's the very least that we can do. And it's something that I think I should be doing if I'm writing. So this poem, I'll read it has a little, I don't know what it's called because it's not at the beginning, so I don't think it's an epigraph. It's like a few lines at the end explaining the context of the poem on the page, but it doesn't really make sense to read it afterwards. So I'll read it now and then the rest of the poem. So this is called Porter, and this is based on an event that some of you might be familiar with. 39 premature babies are placed in bed after being taken off incubators in Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital after a power outage. 3 have already died. And this is from Reuters, November 14, 2023. Once the generator powers down, he wheels the incubators one by one. In glass the size of shoe boxes, life is the weight of almond flour. He lifts and sets them onto beds as they stretch their bony shoulders into elliptical shapes of sparrow wings, stands back while others rush to cannulate veins in skin, thin as the skeletons of pressed leaves. After, he lights a cigarette, inhales. Moonlight soaks the gauze of night. Ash falls to the ground, briefly glows red. He snuffs it out under his shoe, holds his breath, exhales. So this next poem is written about a similar subject. It's written with Palestine in mind, but it's taken from, so the first line of each stanza is taken from an existing poem, which is by Faiz Ahmed Faiz, and the poem is Freedom's Dawn. So this was written in August 1947, immediately after the partition of India and the creation of Pakistan. And it's a beautiful poem. I would advise you all to read it if you get the chance. But it's the poem, his poem is about where next. So this is Morning Without Light. Morning without light is carried over the horizon like a dove with an oliveless branch and falls on grieving mothers. False dawn brings no comfort to those who know days are simply nights without end, nights turning their corners like a rotating cube. Relief is born only through sleep, where even dreams are torn like wolves through linen. The silence is a poker rod. Desert of the sky, which scar among your constellations will serve as our oasis? How long can we live in thirst? We have not arrived under the sun, so we walk towards her, our feet faithful as candles in vigil, to bring the light out of Purda. This poem is maybe slightly happier. This is called After the Nightmare. Splash your face with cold, brace the sink, and know this. A blade that cuts the heart's soft fruit can repair it if held in different hands. Where there is a child with broken wings, where there is a bird with broken wings, there is a child who carries it home in a shoebox. Even the trembling leaf is gathering rain to spare us the worst of the storm. Where there is loss, there is prayer sent up like a Chinese lantern, which matters not where it lands, because we still give hope a shape. We light it, let it rise. So this poem is called Most Endings Are Not Supernovas. I wrote this very recently. And I know there's at least 2 people in the room that have heard it before. Wick burns out like breath. There is no song for the evaporating lake. Winter announces itself as a soft cough. Daytime slips away like falling silk. Still, blades of grass spend their afternoons in drooping grief at the loss of morning dew. A dropped kite will always long for breeze, though it has no way to say so. Quiet hurts stay, like initials scratched in bark. And this is my last poem of the printed out poems, and I now think it's been I don't know how long it's been, but it's definitely not been 15 minutes. So I think I'm just going to have to grab my collection over there. Has it been 10? Oh, I've got 10. Oh, I've done 10. Oh, fine. All right. Well, I'll just talk a bit. So this poem, I don't know, just to give some context, some of you will probably be familiar with this practice already, but it's something that I've always, and especially recently, been quite intrigued by. It's this concept of sati, which is a while ago in India. I don't know exactly historically which period, or even if it is still a practice that exists. But what would happen is, if a husband died, especially during war, it would be expected that his wife would commit sati, so she would throw herself onto his funeral pyre. So rather than live as a widow, she would burn herself alive in order to not live and dishonor her husband who has passed. And obviously that is quite disturbing for many reasons, hot take. But I think that image has been in my head a lot recently. And I think I'm trying to make it out as though it's really deep and psychological. But the truth is, there's a really good Bollywood film where the heroine commits sati at the end, and I watched it like last year. And I think that's why it's coming up in my poems. But I'm pretending that there's a deeper reason. So this poem is called Surrender. She piles sandalwood onto hacksawed logs, douses the amber light with oil, then daubs it on the silk of her wrist, the shell of skull behind her earlobe. She unravels cotton cloth tied at her waist, unfastens her anklets, gathers all her futures, folds them into the fire the way the red sun folds itself into the horizon's palm at dusk. She burns her past to eucalyptus bone until there is only now and only this burning. Should I do? Should I do some more? All right. I'm twisting my arms. Okay. I'm going to spend the next few minutes choosing which ones to read.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I haven't actually read that one in ages. That's a nice idea. So this is called Too Much Mirch, which roughly translates as too much spice. And it comes from this poem, which is about my grandma. So this is called Amma's Kitchen. So Amma was my paternal grandmother. I watch you through a fog of onion tears. Our noses fizz with mirch and garam masala. I suggest paprika. You wipe away my tears, hands soft as kajur. The trace of chili on your fingertips sears my eye. I see you in red, but you are and will always be lilac, like the chadar you wear over your silver hair, the lavender you plant between reeds. Once the hissing oil begins to whisper, you slice garlic with care into the handi, then lift a spoon into my mouth. My eyes give me away, too much mirch. You laugh. Your silly English granddaughter can't handle the Pakistani heat. And I'll read. I'm going to read this one and maybe leave it there. So this is about someone I didn't know, but was a part of my family. And it's named Asr Prayer. So we have 5 daily prayers. Asr is the 3rd one of the day. But also it's the name of a surah in the Quran, which translates as the declining day. And it's about the surah itself is about the passage of time. You arrive at the airport with a suitcase full of American goods, M&Ms, watches, hairdryers. Your cousins pull you into a playful chokehold, rub their knuckles against your scalp like flint. Young girls glance at you a moment longer than they should, wilt into women as you move through the street, your green eyes lighting the way like fireflies. Your aunties have made fresh roti and are milling you as you enter the house. Our American boy has come home. Your cousins do not take you for a drive. Instead, you go for a swim in the Swat River, your skin like olive oil in the water. Your cousins look upon your beauty and say, "Mashallah." They give you a towel, dry clothes, walk you home safely. They do not take you for a drive. They do not crash the car and carry your body back to the village, shrouded in a leather jacket. Your cousins do not take you for a drive. They drop you at the airport, where you give them your salam. You land safely. Your mother holds her precious boy and you hold her back. You finish school, attend college. Your brother learns to cook, not cage fight, because your brother isn't angry. You marry and we steal your shoes at the wedding. On Eid, you walk into the garden with a wife and a baby. Your grandmother kisses you on the forehead. You are her loveliest one. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much. So I'm Adam Ketz. I help out with the Centre of Poetry at Poetics, which is also organising tonight and also standing in as Aggie. But I won't put on the Hungarian accent. Just to introduce Inua Ellams to you. She's born in Nigeria. Inua Ellams is a poet, playwright, performer, graphic artist, and designer. But also many talents. He is a complete works poet alumni, facilitates workshops in creative writing where he explores recurring themes in his work: identity, displacement, destiny, in accessible, enjoyable ways for participants of all ages, backgrounds. His awards, a long list here. It's from the Edinburgh Fringe Award, First Award, Liberty Human Rights Award, a Black British Theatre Award, goes on and on and on. And he's been commissioned by, he's been commissioned by the,
Is it too informal if I sit down? No, you can't see me.
We can see you.
You could see, but she can't see. You don't have to see
It's
me.
fine. I know what you look
You know
like.
what I look like. Yeah, I'll spend. It's all right. Hello, hi. Thanks for coming this evening, and thank you for your reading. Thank you so much. I haven't decided what to read. Okay, it's 6:27 now, so 6:45-ish. I need to be off the stage. The space. 6:50.
Yeah, no.
That's 23. That's 7. I haven't decided what to read, so I have the search function into this app that contains everything I've ever written. Yeah, which means that there's a lot of bad things in there. But if you guys would give me a word, I'll type in and then see what contains your words, and so we'll do it that way. So yeah, who has a word?
Peace.
Peace. Okay, that's what was it's not peaceful. Let me see what contains peace. Okay. Yes. Okay, peace comes up in quite a few things. Okay, I'll start there. Yeah, okay, good. There's enough. Okay, I'll start with this one, which is called Dear Tina. It's an old little love poem I wrote in, when I was 25. I'm turning 40 in about 11 days. So this is young Inua. This is a love poem called Dear Tina. Dear Tina, the day I discovered how she survived the Civil War, how she saw her friends pass like minutes into oblivion, how she screamed through Morse codes and jungle, dodging bullets, hiding and crying into rain. The day I discovered my grandfather heard her wailing, felt something enough to move him after her in darkness, through rain, how her eyes found in the flickering bounce of hurricane lamps, showed a place so pure, he sailed her away to the embrace of Paris, the kiss of Rome, the world with its wide welcoming dome. The day I discovered this, why she called him hero. She died peacefully at 90 years old. He followed her an hour after, again into darkness. All these years, he never let go. That day, I realized we live in different worlds. Friends pass too fast for minutes. Wars come after X Factor, and turtle-dove romances exist in the past. But I will send one sentence to you, one text message screaming through Wi-Fi zones and digital codes, dodging ones and zeros like bullets and anti-heroes, promising, if ever you're lost in this urban jungle, I'll find and bring you in from rain. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dear Tina. Okay, let me see what else has the word peace in it. Yeah, I wrote a one-person show called The 14th Tale, which I performed at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and then transferred to the National Theatre. Because of that, I became a playwright, and I never really thought of that as myself. And it contains the word peace, and this is how the play starts. It's a long monologue poem called Ash Skinned. I'm from a long line of troublemakers, of ashy-skinned Africans, born with clenched fists and a natural thirst for battle, only quenched by breast milk. They'd suckle as if the white silk sliding between gums were liquid peace treaties written from mums. Their small thumbs would dimple the soft mounds of brown flesh, goose pimpling chests till the ceasefire of sleep would creep into eyes they'd keep to the moon set. Then wake, twice hungry, twice vexed, raring to go. My grandfather, 6 years old, tough and scatterbrained, as all boys would be, once in a gathering of tribes, crawled under tables, past the feet of tribal chiefs, serviced by the serving dishes, cupped his hands together, began shoveling the special treat of fried goose meat into his mouth. When the cry of thief, oh thief, rang out, he turned, wondering who had such audacity to find an angry line of village crooks coming his way. With his face still stained with the spiced juice of diced goose, he grabbed another handful and fled into the dark woods, chased by siblings, pets, and abuse. They say he ran so fast, the ground gasped and forgot to take footprints. They lost him in the fields. But the story never left memory, was told around campfires and followed his son, my father, to secondary school, where the campus-wide trend for long nicknames was maximized by senior boy who thumbed through a textbook's index, added Periplaneta Americana, the most elaborate he could find, to Nevada, his old title, and swaggered through the halls, slapping younger boys from mispronouncing his name. Once from a crowd gathered at lunch, Periplaneta Americana Nevada struck 6 boys till father, rebelling against seniority, revealed the title was Latin for Nevadan cockroach. The crowd laughed as Nevada chased father, who tripped him through thorn bush, and the long line of troublemakers meets me, inheritor of fast feet and father's contempt for authority, who try as I might to break the line, have battled adults, been chased through schools, and have climbed out more windows than burglars do. I wonder what story will reach my sons. I wonder more what they will do. Okay. Peace. This is a long one. I have some time. This is written after The Ballad of Reading Jail, which was a poem by Oscar Wilde. And this is called The Ballad of Abdul Hafiz. And it's a narrative poem in the ballad form, and everything in this is true. Each man holds something deep inside that festers, drives, and dwells. Some drown it out to dull its pain, but in darkness it swells. Some hide it well, it consumes some, but each needs one to tell. I'm the one a stranger tells one busy, bright spring day, a thing that seemed to dull the sun and make swans fade away. I am the one who hears the cause of one such man's dismay. Peckham High Street bus stop turns in the spring morning sun. The gangs of girls all cuss and twirls, and the rude boys egg them on. Their laughter seems to swim the air gently like ghosts of swans. I think those words will form a verse on beauty out of place, for Peckham is known for grit and stone, and the swans are known for grace. The bus pulls up, and I sit down to write of swans displaced where the man walks on, in old blue jeans and a brown leather coat, also wearing a baseball cap. He walks and seems to gloat as if the sun shines from his voice. He sings with all his throat. I'd never heard a dude like this who ignores the right notes, and loud as if he fears silence, careless as grit and stone. I'd never seen a prouder man who seemed of Peckham's own. He scans the crown for anyone, someone to call his mate. I glance down, fear I'll be the one, but I glance down too late. The seat beside is filled by him. He makes me agitate. His hands are coarse as concrete walls, his leather coat as base. His pocket cups a can of beer he lifts up to his face and slurps with such a relish that he smacks his lips bold-faced. He smells so bad, I hold my breath and wish for a gas mask. Clearing his throat, he looks at me. Who owns the bus? He asks. I don't know. Ken Livingstone, he was mayor at the time. Does Jesus own? He asks. Muhammad owned the bus, he tries. I understand the game. He wants to talk religion, but I don't want the same. So reply, your answer is as good as mine. No claim can be disproved. Muslim, he asks. I have faith, I say. Angry my verse of graceful swans was now slipping away. You made a point better than all, was all he had to say. I peer at him, his dirty face, his can of lukewarm beer. He takes it for a sign to talk and asks my country, where I am Nigerian, I say. How long have you been here? Enough, I say. He laughs out loud and speaks without a care. I am Abdul Hafiz, he says, born in Algeria. I moved to France in '84, and I come over here, but I don't like it here. He says, no money, too trouble. I want to go somewhere more peace. Weather is not horrible. What's good about London today, he asks, scratching his stubble. I look into the flashing streets, fire stations, burnt buildings, crumbling walls and oil spills and reply, hey, the sun's shining. Yes, you're right. He smiles strangely and returns to drinking. I shrug, look to my book and try to catch the verse of swans. A minute silence passes where I see some lines take form, and clearing his throat, killing the swans. He asks what I write on. I refuse to speak to him of swans, so question him on place. Where are you going to see solicitor? Why? I ask. After a while, you need one in London. He laughs and says that casually, then smiles his quiet smile. I look at him intently, at his almost black neckline, a dried saliva on his lips, and wish he'd tell me why. But he sits and he sips his beer. I pretend I don't care. Then Abdul clears his throat again, leans forward in his chair, and speaks a thing so cold to me. I shiver sitting there. It's said each man holds something deep that festers, drives, and dwells. Some drown it out to dull its pain, but in darkness it swells. Some hide it well, it consumes some, but each needs one to tell. I was the one the stranger told this busy, bright spring day, a thing that seemed to dull the sun and make swans fade away. I was the one to hear the words that held that man's dismay. My son died when he was 15 from rare cancers that kills. I drink so I no think too much, forget how inside feels. I know this is not good reason, but this is the way it is. Abdul Hafiz, speaking those words, sits back, looks to the door. His tongue tunnels and tears my heart. My eyes fall to the floor, flicks to the can of beer he holds, and I wish he had some more. His bus stop comes, he turns to me. It was nice to talk to you. With swan-like grace, reaching the door, he steps on calmly through. I wish I'd spoken words of warmth. My lips were frozen blue. I see him often here and there. His heart still drives and dwells. I see him drink to dull its pain, but in darkness it swells. He hides it well, but showed it when he needed one to tell. Thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks. Okay. Okay, something else with the word peace in it. Let me see. What else? What is this? I have a document just called one-liners, which are things I think will become poems at some point. Should I read that?
Yeah.
It's not okay. It's not really a poem. It's just fragments of nonsense. Oh, God. Are you sure you want this? Okay, all right. Really? Are you it's pretty long. So, how about I read something that's more concise? I feel like, okay, fine, I'll read it. Okay, one-liners. When the sun sets on the west, we shall rise from the east. I step out, and the air is the kind of clean kings wish for their kingdom. You can even play Adam, I'll play Eve. Slums of Nazareth, Samuel sells honey on the streets, maybe a poem about money. Radio 3 Commission, the stars are glinting tongue tips that lick the underbelly of the night. Through this, the telly glares. You, 22-year-old you. I was once born to be bad, once trousered myself with a gangster swagger, head bandanaed by Bobby Brown's prerogative. We exist at the tremors that tumble through tongue tips. At the mere mention of our names, flickers turn to flames. Jacket woven of wind, poems that birds sing, a heart of barbed wire, a carpet of clouds sellotaped to the sky. His clothes were yesterday's. I have set my face like a flame in darkness. When the winds rise, worship the echo. Consider this a whisper, talking a cotton-hoofed centurion into the mouths of strangers, serving spittle to phantoms, speaking in braille. The flame faints. Bodies are just bowls. Water wears us. We are how it rules the world, or something, I don't know. I sit with a sentence stretched between smashed teeth and swung fists, battling to write in the thunder speak of youth. It was a long time ago to begin with. The arches finds its rhyme on the looped arms of ... You should hear my soul flex. It sounds like a mountain breathing. They shot the white girl first. When the hammer clutched the spine, she fell, her hair splashed across the carpet. J. Dilla means to me what a heart means to beat. The first time I saw the boy, he was quiet, like sea breeze through old bones, a grain of sand falling on a talking drum, dark of skin, bright of eye, low of forehead, gold of smile, fiddle storms and tickle grass. Born crying out, cursing God as though a landlord for kicking one out of home. A new child wakes to its first 3 a.m., its wet breath touching darkness. Innocence rubs against evil. She has the loudest laugh on the street, as though she swallowed the foghorn in her last life. The photograph that came to symbolize peace, the blonde-haired kid who stuck a hibiscus down the barrel of a gun, was called George Harris. He grew up to be a drag queen. Mountain music, a heart stuffed with sparks. Fuck fairy powder. We smoke stampede dust off the hooves of horned cattle. Stuffed pollen down nostrils, the fearless want for thunder, the meek seek less rain. The moon in her mane, a necklace flashed mercurial, I was brought up to believe in hell. I held the match to his face as if studying the mystery of fire, a dying daffodil drained of brilliance, the hill-born braves, a saxophone made of bamboo, a glass made of drums, a nervous traffic, breathing bridges, wood music. Psych, punch cyclones out of the way. We are built of dust and oil, stuck to the turning of the earth's cry. Through us sounds its wanderings, deep, new, and knowledgeless. They call it the decay, the diminishing of sound after you've struck an instrument. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Incredible, thanks. You know, I feel like we could have shouted out a few more words at you though, so we might need to try that later. Think of some good ones. I think Imtiaz doesn't need an introduction from any of you. You'll be familiar with her work, but I'm going to read a little bit. So Imtiaz grew up in a Muslim Calvinist in a Lahori household in Glasgow, was adopted by India and married into Wales. That sounds like a poem in itself. She's an artist poet. She's published 6 books with Blood Axe. I'm not going to read all the titles. Her 7th, Shadow Reader, is published in 2024. All her collections are illustrated, and illustration is an integral part of her books. She's also put on many exhibitions of drawings. She's on the GCSE and A-level English syllabus. She reads every year with other poets at Poetry Live. And she's been on Desert Island Discs. So if you haven't already listened, do listen.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ronnie and Aggie, for putting us all together in this room and for those exceptional readings that we've just heard. When I'm reading from my new book, Shadow Reader, and Shadow Reader was, when I was in my 20s, I was taken to see a great many astrologers, and one of them was the Shadow Reader. It was someone who measured my shadow, made some calculations in a jotter, and then picked out an ancient scroll from behind his back to predict my future. Of course, I didn't believe a word that he said, but even the mind of a non-believer can be possessed and occupied and colonized. In the year of my death, when I was 25, the Shadow Reader said I would live to a ripe old age. He licked his finger, flicked a page, and told me the year of my death. That year has arrived. When you come away from the rose garden, your eyes have changed color. You arrive in the city of pointing fingers to keening sirens and beeping phones, the clicking, the screens all on. And you still have petals falling from your mouth. You cross from corner to corner, a fugitive in this time. Your eyes are watercolor. In them, the city and all its workings have been stamped with guilt. The script blazes over the walls of the meat market, but the streets are brambled, thorned, and on the illuminated borders, there are drops of blood. But the roses are savages that will eat you alive, given the chance. The map of this country is made of scars. They will put the body on a slab for examination. No. Out of respect for this body, no. There will be an inquiry to determine, no. There was some jostling, 2 sides clashing, both sides were at fault, no. Seen from above, it looks like grief, wrapped in a shroud of dust. But the blood has seeped so long and deep, it could be a ring of rust. The wounds will be washed and sewn up to look like a map of a country that does not exist. They will carry the body as if it is a homeland they have lost. On their shoulders, they will carry the coffin Yes. The mourners will lift their hands to honor her. Yes. There will be a bullet. Yes. There will be jostling. Yes. This is a wound opening. This is a country being torn again and again, a person falling apart. Yes. And everyone watching. Yes. Did we watch this happening? Yes. Did anyone see? No. Witness. Sometimes the truth is not a beacon, but a small flame, or only the light of a phone falling on the face of a witness. Face to face. Who is telling this? The one who gives the gift or the one who takes? Can the writer be forgiven by the one who is written? Does the warp look back at the one who is weaving and say, this is not how I remember it, not how it happened at all? Who belongs in this thing you're making? The rose garden throws away its symmetry and lifts off the page with a mind of its own. The wind spreads rumors and a new language blows in, written in script that looks like your heart beating. Windows tilt to catch the truth at a different angle. Our shadow lies on this page, reader. Your hand slides off parchment to touch human skin. Open the other face. Look in. Loom. They are weaving the world and everything that lives in it. They bend over the loom, reading it like a book that will teach them the structure of tulips, crocus heads, roses. If the knot is wrong, they feel the mistake as a glitch in the bones. When their fingers bleed, the borders leak ruby and scarlet. Trees blossom out of season, fruit fills and ripens as if time means nothing, as if pain is only the start of beauty. They are weaving so hard and fast, you would think their lives depend on it. They take the tears off their children's faces to fill up the watercourses. They are weaving their times in thread, teaching the loom the way of the world. It hums with business, heaves with the blasphemy of human bodies, hosts of angels, swarms of midges. Songbirds turn into bombers, gazelles to armored tanks. On every border, there's new danger. Drones overhead, walls blasted to rubble. Messages appear on the backs of buses. Neon signs call for help. Clubbers spill out, looking for Ubers, demanding bacon rolls or the first train home, vomiting at corners. The one who is tied to the rock by a chain watches the vultures circling down for the succulence inside, the liver. Starlings fall out of the sky, and the weavers bury them in silk. They make up spells and blessings to hold things together till morning. When the children get up out of sleep, bare feet on the floor, doors banging open to let the green back in. It smells like split melon. This is not a prayer mat. It is the prayer. The weaver makes a pitch. This is the work of many hands. It contains all of paradise, eaten by moths in one small corner. For you, special price. Where you belong. You can squat in this room if you don't say a word. You can stay in this town if you pay for a room. You can go on this train if it's off peak. You can speak your mind if you change your look. You can have your chance if you don't expect luck. You can be in the group if you get enough likes. You can live with family if you toe the line. You can keep your children if we count the sign. You can enter this church if you quote the book. You can open the book if you close your mind. You can save our time if you follow the rules. You can play a role if you buy the mask. You can take on the task if no one else wants it. You can ask the question if you never offend. You can belong, but only if you don't stay too long. You can end it now or start over again. You can follow the signs but never turn back. You can see you've run out of time and years. You can leave in tears or go with a laugh. You can take your clothes but leave your shoes and that attitude behind. It does you no favors, and you can do us a favor. Don't change your mind. The next one's called Back. Is there anyone here from Scotland or from Glasgow? All right, one who'll know what I'm talking about here. Back. When the person holding your passport says, you'll have to go back where you came from, you're 4 again, crossing the bridge at Jamaica Street, the River Clyde rolling under your feet, away to sea where the ships set sail. And when the woman in the queue mutters, this is not where you belong, you think of the way life plays hide and seek over the hills on the Sunday morning ride up the Campsie Fells. And when the man outside the pub looks you up and down and says, go back to your country, you know you could squash the stoter if you could be bothered, but go back to your cave and bile your heed, you darling walloper. And even if you're wired to the moon, that's when your heart goes home and you curry doon, all of Glasgow shining in your window, because this is where you came from, the place that will always have your back. For the minicab driver who looked as if he needed feeding. He looked so young, his hands bony at the wheel. I wonder if he's been out all night, what he might have had for breakfast, what he eats when his shift ends, whether his mother makes him Punjabi samosas or Bengali mustard fish or Kerala rice, if he prefers the mangoes of the north like me or the sweeter ones from further south. Before I can stop them, the words fall out of my mouth. And where are you from? I mean, your people. They land somewhere on the back of the neck, slide into the rearview mirror, roll into his eyes. He looks back for 1 second, and his face is a passport, and his back is a flag. And he says, Barnsley, and I pay and get out. For the girl on the Elizabeth line, standing by the door, the way young people do, as if a seat is a waste of life. You're lost in each other. His hand in your hair, he's speaking softly into your ear. You stand quite still, head down, listening. Then your face begins to do that terrible thing where it looks like paper being crumpled before it's thrown away, because the poem doesn't work and the page is cruel. In another life, you would shake his hand off your neck and know how it feels to be touched with respect. But the doors open at Tottenham Court Road, and he steers you out with the flat of his hand on your back, and the people in the carriage try not to look at each other. Night walk with Blackbird. Night walk is long as the dark, dark long as the shadow, shadow long as lost gods, gods long gone as gutted words. Because I have walked so many miles alone, because it has been too long since I saw your face, the rings are falling off my fingers, bangles sliding off my wrists. When I come to count the dead, they do not look like numbers. They look like people who were loved, laid with care on hospital beds. Over the long wailing of ambulances, a blackbird begins to sing. And I think, this is what I mean. This is what I was trying to say all along. While I was in the bar of the Station Hotel in Hull not long ago, and imagine seeing Philip Larkin sitting at a far table drinking beer. And I wondered, would I go up to speak to him? Never. Would he even see me? Of course not. I'd be nothing but a kind of unwelcome blur at the edge of his vision. So I began to imagine him as a young man and to construct his imaginary profile on a dating app. Swiping left on Larkin. Here, he's younger, his shoulders thinner. She flicks a finger, swipes left. He is dismissed without a flicker. If they pass on the street, she sees a boy trudge by with a book and satchel under the arm, on the way to a lifetime of drudge, easy to overlook. In the edge of his eye, she's a blur between staying or dying, a whiff of abroad, the chaos of prams and infants teething. At the end of every birth is grieving. He takes the dark for a walk, his light on a leash through the sputtering streets of a town caught in the act of drowning. From a window, a curtain is waving, but his back is turned. Shops shut up and shutters come down on the chatter of living the guttering years. All roads lead to a leaving. He goes into the bar of the Station Hotel, sits for a while. When he leaves a pale ring on the table. Gold spills out of basements over his feet. He walks down a street and out of his name. Beyond rumor and fame, a flurry of letters blown into gutters, the glitter of language on cobbles. His words remain, hard as knuckles, bright as believing or half believing. At the end of the world, there is always the sea and its breathing, swiping right, across a blue screen to something beginning. Coming back to the shadow readers predicting the year of my death, not long ago, I just decided it might be time to start thinking about writing a will. Before you begin to make an inventory of material gains and worldly goods, you are told it is possible and even advisable to bequeath your entire digital history to your heirs. The horror of it. The ignominy. She experiences a moment of dread. Supposing it comes back into fashion to bury the dead with all they possess, laptops, phones, chargers, cupboards, sofas, the shame of it, the scale of the tomb to be sunk underground for the cars and hair dryers, the unworn dresses, too tight to wear, too dear to lose. Think of the tons of soil to be shoveled out of the earth for the shoes, my God, the shoes. She has an off day. Sawed off. If you sold the book or bagged the prize or launched a career or lost a stone and dropped a dress size. Sawed off if you managed the holiday in Sharm el-Sheikh and posted a picture of the strawberry mojito you are sipping this minute with a pink umbrella and ice. When I'm not like this, I'm nice. Really. Smiley face. She contemplates her death. Please don't write an obituary or send a tweet that says how sweet I was. I died despising everything and every one of you, and especially did not appreciate the pictures you hearted of rabbits and donkeys. but the radiance. But I didn't believe a word he said. The shadow reader predicted the year of my death, not how or where. I shrugged and put it out of my head, but my body believed. There was no way I could die at 35 or 45. I crossed murderous roads, ran red lights in rickshaws, took flights in turbulent skies, watched a plague go by. But in the year of the shadow, I remember the veins on his hand, the finger he licked, the mark on the scroll. I try to read the names of the ones who are dying when it should have been me. But all I can see is the name of the earth right here, written over and over in the dying year. And the last two that I'll read, everywhere the angels. They are here with us, wings thrust into silk and wool, crawling over used surfaces where the body has thrashed and turned and shed its cells, its lovely dust. They leave a trail of eggs that float through warp and weft. The ghost children will stay unnamed, but eat the beauty of this life till there is nothing left of it but indrawn breath. And they will find Jerusalem in hair and fur, the fiber spun from hope and dread in a lifetime that will last days and hang by a radiant thread. I walk in the shadow. My walk is iambic. I keep the beat. Shall I compare thee to da-dum, da-dum? There's comfort in knowing it doesn't matter where my feet are going. If I can hear the iamb of my heart, I'm not dead yet. My walk is a sonnet. My walk is mashallah. My walk is fuck you, shadow reader.
Thank you, Imtiaz. I'm seeing quite a few commonalities between you and Philip Larkin now. Thanks to all of our poets tonight. We've got some time for questions and conversation, but rather than asking them to come to the front, I think we can probably all hear each other if people just, is that okay, Adam? Yeah, do we just, anyone who wants to ask anything? I'll stand here so I can kind of see. Anyone want to kick us off?
Can I ask a question about the Larkin poem? Was it on Poetry, Please?
It was, yes.
Yeah, because that's what I did it for, yeah.
Not Poetry, Please, but somewhere
Another
else.
radio before, yeah.
Yeah, it's been somewhere else.
Yeah,
Private Passions? I don't know.
yeah.
We'll try and find it later.
Yeah.
Share the link. Anyone got a question?
Yes. Did you always write with like humour, because you're very funny? And did you always write with humour as long as you've written, or is that something that's developed as you become a writer?
Lovely question, thank you. You know, when I was a baby poet, I used to do things that were very morose and very serious, because I thought that's what poetry had to be. And that went on quite a while. But then I met my late husband, Simon Powell, and he had cancer, but he found a way to, even with everything serious that was happening, he always managed to lighten it. He would say the most outrageous things, and somehow it made the pain more bearable. And I remember, of course, that was something that really I learned from him, that a way to deal with grief or loss is very often to laugh as well, to know that those things can go hand in hand. And sometimes being able to laugh about it can heighten the seriousness of what's happening, but also make it feel more part of you. So I think that began to slide over into my poems, and I began to, I didn't consciously do it, but I began to see the absurdity in all of this. So, thank you for the question.
Anyone else take a shot?
What's your favourite bird to write about? What bird do you think about writing about next? I think it's a blackbird. Anyone?
Actually, I've got a poem that I'm working on about a pigeon. So it's not my favourite, but it's the answer to the question.
I like blackbirds.
I thought you did.
Yeah, I just think the sound's so pure. And then I love the Indian koel, which is the Indian cuckoo, because that's a sound that kind of echoes over the trees, and it's the sound of love and longing, and is used in Urdu poetry a lot to signify longing.
I don't really write about birds. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a swan in the I tried to write about it, and the first interrupted it. So.
Are you sure if I want to put bird in your search engine?
Yeah. Well, so I once saw a pigeon pecking at KFC.
Yeah.
That just really messed me up. Maybe that at some point I've never gotten rid of that image. So maybe that.
Thank you.
Okay. You've all kind of talked about the different ways that you've changed as poets, either because like your life has changed to you're like a doctor, or just because you've been writing for such a long time that you've gone from one place to another. Other than the humour that you've already mentioned, what other ways do you think you've all evolved as poets?
I think I've stopped feeling I have to write long poems all the time. My poems have become shorter and shorter, because sometimes they're just 2 lines, because it feels as if I've said what I want to say.
I think the biggest change is that I realised I didn't just have to write about myself, and that was really freeing. And then I was like, oh, there's a whole world, and I can write poems about that instead. So I think maybe just turning outward a bit more, and also allowing that to be more protective of myself, because I think before I was not as self-conscious of an audience, and so I would just write whatever I was thinking or feeling, and then that would hurt me afterwards, because I would then people would know these things about me, and I hadn't really made the connection that if I wrote something or published it, people would read it. But now I think I can be a bit more, write a bit more freely without being so like intensely personal.
When I first started out writing, I mostly wrote about the world, and I was just for various reasons, which was making me angry. And then I shifted into writing about myself after I was challenged to do so. To write a poem with no simile, metaphor, nothing, just the naked word in the state, and it had to be about you. And when that worked, I thought, okay, great, I can write about myself now. And then I found a way of doing both, being intensely political but intensely personal in the actual, which came out in 2020. And then after that, my relationship with poetry just completely disintegrated, to the point where I kept being asked to judge poetry competitions, and I I'd be sent a book to blurb for the poet, and I think, oh my God, this book is terrible. And then the poem would win a big award, and I began to question all my aesthetics and my sense of poetry. And I'm still trying to build that bridge which I burned in my head. So I'm trying to rebuild my relationship with poetry, and I'm not sure what it will now be. I'm working on a new book, probably take 20 years, whatever. And I'm interested in the poet I'll be at the end of that. at the moment. I'm just sort of in no man's land.
I want to go back to something that Safia said, which I find really interesting. It is the whole question of self-censorship or censorship, and how much we, at some point think we're going to edit. And I really, I don't think I changed in that way, but I think it's a really important thing to know that your family are never going to be happy with what you've written. Don't even try. They will see themselves in the worst. They will see themselves and imagine. All your friends will think you're talking about them if you say every occasion is something that someone will read themselves into. So don't worry don't ever try to censor yourself.
You, like, as someone who's trying to get back into writing, like, do you have any, like, rituals or any, like, habits or anything that you kind of need to, like, start writing? Like, I can't write in silence. I have to have a playlist. Like, do you have any rituals that you need to write?
It's like the playlist you mentioned. I go and read some of the poems I love because that unlocks something as well. And if it's lines that you remember and that are familiar, and they will unlock something. And then I go and walk as well. And there's something in the sound of the footsteps and the beat of the footsteps on pavement that can unlock a poem.
For me, because I wanted to be a visual artist when I was a kid, I'm still led by images first. And when an image settles within me, I imagine it's a metaphor for something, and the poem is that answer. So I wait for a metaphor. I wait to be bugged, to be attacked, to be haunted, to be baby reindeered by an image. And then I try and figure out why it's following me around, and then the poem is the answer.
To be honest, my ritual is just to try, because I had probably like yourself, especially when you're a student, it's very difficult to have a consistent relationship with writing. I know that there are some people that can do it and wake up at similar time every day, and that's wonderful. And I'm sure they're all Nobel laureates for fiction or whatever. But if you're just like a normal person that has a job or is trying to get a degree and you're also trying to write, one of the best things you can do is just actually set aside time for yourself. And for me, if that meant, okay, I have to take some annual leave and be like, this week I'm going on a writing course and I'm going to write poems, or this weekend I'm going to attend a writing workshop, and it will just force me to write something. Even if it's not very good, I know that I'm making an effort to carve out time in my life for that, because I spend much more time thinking about why I'm not writing than writing. And I think that's like a bit of a procrastination tool. And we do it with like lots of different things. Writing's not the only thing that you do it with. But a good starting point is if you set aside time and make it very unambitious. Even if you start with like, I'm going to have half an hour this week and I'll review it again in a fortnight. That is maybe not enough to have a consistent practice, but it's enough to get you going. And then I think once you're on that track, once you start having ideas and you feel like, okay, I've got a project in mind, or I am building steam, naturally, you're going to find yourself sitting down to write more and more. And you'll find that there might be little practices that help you, whether that's, meditating for it beforehand, or listening to something, or going for a walk, whatever it is. But the time and setting that aside is the first thing that I would say for myself as well as for you.
I sit in stations and eavesdrop. Because people come up with all kinds of things. And I think actually that's one of the things we're all doing, isn't it? Eavesdropping on the world. As poets.
How do you know, like, accept that the poem is finished? And how do you try not to sway from, like, the original idea too much? Because sometimes I write a poem and I've edited it so much that I think, shocking idea. Well, I've swayed so much from the original. thought that it's just completely different ideas? How do you know like that you're happy with the poem?
You never know. I never know until my editor pulls it out of my hands and says, "This is it." Because I will always keep changing poems even when I'm reading them.
I've read some of them. I think I mentioned this to the guys on our workshop with poems are never finished, they're just abandoned. Oh wow, you just move it punctuation around and you just have to let it go. And usually I think when a poem is published is when I stop moving around. But if I hear that's going to be published somewhere, I think, okay, great. So not really. There's a South African poet, and she said, the job of being something like the process of being a poet is the process of personal development, which means that if you get older and wiser, the poem should also get older and wiser. You never really stop working, really.
So never.
Short answer is, yeah, I don't. I think this is probably like, because I'm at a relatively like early stage in my career, I struggle with what you said, which is probably having the confidence to know when something's done. And that's also because I think when you try and write something, you know what you're trying to do, but usually you need someone else to affirm whether it's worked or not. And that's where, when you write enough for long enough, poets with very experienced, like the other poets I've read tonight, become that reader, I think, for themselves a little bit more. But in the beginning, I do find it helpful to have people that I trust that I will share my work with. And they'll say, okay, yeah, leave that alone, or you can work on it here and there. And there's also 2 people in this room that usually tell me to stop whining, it's finished.
Don't say stop whining.
No, stop whining at yourself. It's very good, leave it alone. You have one more question?
Sophia, at the beginning of your reading, you were talking about the difficulty of writing about more trivial things when something like a genocide is going on. And although that is particularly egregious at the moment, there's very rarely a time when there isn't something horrific going on. And as poets or artists more broadly, it's our responsibility to address those things and not more frivolous things. Humour is different. I'm not talking about the humour that Imtiaz, what I'm talking about. Is it too vain and conceited of us to think that that is our job as poets?
I don't think so. I've been thinking about this more recently, and I think maybe before I had in my head, and I say art, and that includes poetry, but that includes lots, like all forms of art, be they literary, visual, multimedia, it doesn't matter, musical. For me, I always thought that art exists for one of 2 reasons, and that's either to call truth to something or to act as a distraction. And lots of what is kind of mainstream and modern entertainment, as much as I enjoy it, is a kind of social anesthetic. Like, it does switch you off from things that are actually happening. And there's also brilliant art that highlights what's actually happening. But when I say what's actually happening, that doesn't need to just be political. That doesn't need to be just about war and conflict. What's actually happening can be in here, and it can be in here, and it can be between 2 people. The reason conflict and genocide is really sad is because people die. And the reason that's sad is because people matter. And you can write stories about people in whatever form that takes. You can write a story about, a conversation with a stranger on the bus, and that can move so many people's heart, because it's not about the fact that all you did was get on a bus and all you did to talk to a drunken guy. You connected to someone else's humanity. And I think that's probably why I think it matters to write about where humanity is missing. And those might be the major issues of what, is in the headlines or isn't in the headlines. But that's also in interactions where humanity is present, and that can be like an intensely personal or extremely frivolous moment. Like my
in my little pamphlet, there's most of the poems are not about big picture things. But I don't think that means they aren't about things that matter. Just sometimes you have to get to that point of understanding that there's a spectrum of what happens when we're alive, and you're allowed to place value on all of that. And you're also allowed to choose which of those things you want to write about. I've found it quite liberating to accept that there are some issues where there are people who already write about them really well. And so the way that I want to engage with that is by reading them. I don't have to be the one who writes about it. I can highlight that they've written it, but like it doesn't have to be me that speaks on every issue. So that's a bit long.
It's a brilliant answer.
I think you're more generous than I would have been. There's no play yesterday at the National Theatre, and it was another version of Oedipus or Antigone set in the prison. It was well crafted or whatever, but it's at the end it's about incest. It was done really well. It looked really nice. But I just thought a lot of people here have the privilege to not worry about what's happening right now in the Middle East. And I just couldn't not think about that. You know, part of the reason is that I sit at this really toxic Venn diagram of so much of the things happening right now. My father traveled to Mecca for the pilgrimage, returned after that and was questioning his faith. So Boko Haram, before they became that, tried to kill him. So questions about Islam, the beauty of the religion, those who are weaponizing its language. I was born into that. Nigeria is still locked in sectarian violence between Muslims and Christians. So a lot of what's happening around the world in terms of geopolitics, East, West versus South, and that's playing out across the Middle East. Again, I was born into it. The reason why Boko Haram exists is because of the spread of desertification. So climate change, again, is very much within my DNA. So a lot of the big things that are, I'm an immigrant, I've lived in places, Theresa May tried and failed to kick me out of this country for so much, and so many successive right-wing conservatives, home secretaries tried and failed to kick my family out. I've had cousins who died, I've taught students, unaccompanied minors, who just narrowly managed to escape drowning in the Mediterranean. You know, the rubber dinghy sank, they swam to shore, they ended up washed up on Lampedusa. A lot of these things are in my body, you know, so I can't help but think, as entertaining as this is, there's so many other things we should be doing here, you know. So some of this to do with my trauma, and I'm aware of it. And people can write whatever they want, but I can't not look at the big things, you know. It just feels too close to me. Yeah.
To be involved. So.
That's why I like poetry.
Yeah.
So the question for Imtiaz, really, I've been reading Shadow Reader, which I got from Waterstones. You'll be pleased to know it's on the shelf in Waterstones. You have a lot of pages where you have a little 3-line section that obviously relates to other, you know, to other parts of the poem. Indeed, once or twice, I think, when you were reading, you read those as though they were part of the end of the poem. Can you just explain the relationship that you feel between their 2 stars and the longer sections of poems?
I think what happens is, even while there's one idea going on, there are always offshoots as well. And sometimes, because with thinking about a bigger poem, the offshoots, the other things get left out. It's like little green shoots off the main, and not even the main. I mean, sometimes the small ones are the main point. There are ways of sliding between poems with ideas that might have got left out otherwise. It's even while we sit here, we're saying one thing, but there are 20 other ideas that are happening as well. So that's partly what that is. I mean, when you hear Safia and Inua speaking about what makes us write as well. I wake up shouting and swearing at the radio every day, but that may or may not, and in fact doesn't appear overtly in the poems. I think one of the things that we keep trying to do, or at least that I've been doing in this book, is to say that there are other stories, there are other sides to this story. You've managed to skew this. There's a warp in the way that stories are told, because everyone will tell them, even in art, through all kinds of works of art. We've been told particular stories even about ourselves. And there's a way to redress some of that as well. There are ways of taking back the language, taking back the words, writing the wrong that's happening every day on media, all kinds of media. And everyone will have their own way of rewriting. But that's part of what goes on. Thank you.
Well, I think it's probably a good time to stop, but do carry on the conversations, and there are books for sale in the corner. Who's selling the books? You, Pete. Look to Pete. Thank you.